Hi everyone. So thank you for coming. Thanks RallyPad for hosting this event. So I'm Edward from Startup Dream Team. So I'm just going to say a few words about the program. So it's a 8 weeks summer program for 30 interns here in the Bay, in young entrepreneurs. The purpose is to help them discover the Silicon Valley in a short amount of time and have them work together and create startup teams. And every week we have a speaker coming to us and talking about his experience so that we can learn as much as we can. So tonight we are really happy to receive Marcus Nelson, who is currently the founder of Advocate, was the Salesforce head of social media, and also he's a co-founder of User Voice. Previously we received Heaton Shah, we received Robert Scoble, we received also Will Young from Zappos, and in the next few weeks we'll have again a few speakers coming, among whom Mike Maples. So thanks you again for coming. Is there anything else I have to say? Okay, so thanks Marcus. It's your turn.
We're all kinked up here. I feel like I'm going to be shortchanged. All right, hi guys. Thank you for having me. Thanks to Pierre, not the camera, but Pierre, who's behind the camera. All right. I'm kind of perplexed as to what the group is here. There's some startup founders here, and there's some interns here. Can I get an idea of how many people here are interning at a startup? A good proportion, okay. And then how many people here are entrepreneurs already? Okay. How many wantrepreneurs are there? Okay, that's good too. Good. You got about a third. All right, that's cool. I was a wantrepreneur, and I grew up in Wausau, Wisconsin. And incidentally, my wife went to school with Marissa Mayer. And of course, we all know the news of that today. She's now the CEO of Yahoo! That's pretty cool. Growing up in Wisconsin, I didn't have a lot of access to people, much like probably most of you guys. You kind of looked at the valley and kind of lived vicariously through all these certain people that you came across. And I had the luxury of being able to be at the beginning of Twitter. And having been a designer and designing front end for a lot of startups, I would fly out here, meet some startups, do some design work back in Wisconsin, and just go back and forth. And for the longest time, I just kind of felt like this outsider every time coming in and feeling like, gosh, I just wish I lived here, And for whatever circumstances, I was married, I had kids, and I couldn't really make the leap at that time. And you kind of go through that series. And I know I'm speaking to you guys because you guys are all from somewhere else and is it different now that you're here? Yeah? Okay, yeah, totally. And they don't speak French, so that's one big difference, I guess, right? No. Salut, ça va? Oui, ça va. Okay, so anyway, I moved out here in, actually, I'm sorry, I came out here to do a group, has anybody ever heard of TaskPick? Exactly. And so I was working on this project called TaskPick with a bunch of guys from Oracle and Autodesk. And we had this idea for doing task management and meeting planning, and it was like, oh my God, we're gonna kick ass, and all this other stuff. And you design this, and then you rip it apart, and you design it again, and everything. And I was having this struggle, I cannot get my engineers to see things like I do as a designer, right? And I'd talk to customers or potential customers, I'd show them the design specs, and then I'd say, well, these are the requirements, what do you guys think? And they'd say, that's crap, you don't want to do that, or that's too much, or whatever, right? And as a designer, I never had leverage to go to my engineers and say, look, I don't think this is what people really want. We shouldn't waste time building this. Let's build the stuff that they do want. And so this was going on and on. I ended up at a super happy dev house. Anybody been to a super happy dev house? Okay, you and me, we're going to party afterward. Okay, so Super Happy Dev House is an organization put together by David Weekley. I don't know if do they still do them? They still do them, okay. And they're mainly down in the peninsula, and what it is they get a bunch of geeks, and they'll rent, well, at that time they rented out like mansions. Now they rent out like full facilities like Google and whatever. And you go and you like hack for a whole weekend, and it's just crazy, and it's pretty awesome. Anyway, so I showed up there. I meet this guy, and he had built this thing called Slim Timer, which was a way for kind of billing your clients on an hourly basis. And I'd use this to bill my clients, so I thought it was great. We kind of did the whole bromance, like, oh man, that's awesome. I remember that feature. That was great. You know, whatever. And so we started talking, and I was telling him how this issue that I was having over and over again, and how I couldn't get people to do what I wanted, or what I perceived was the issue, and I didn't have leverage. And he said he was having the same issue. He had a co-founder, and he was trying to figure out like how to do that as well. And then time went on, right? I go my way, he goes on his way. We exchange business cards. We follow each other on Twitter, and that's it, right? That's how the world works here. And 9 months later, there's an ad on Craigslist. And I thought, this sounds like me. It was like, you know, dashingly handsome, has kids, married. No, just kidding. That was any of it. But it was asking for somebody who had a design background with some marketing and wanted to do a startup or whatever. So I threw my resume out. And this dude, it was this guy, the same guy that I met, not this dude, but I mean this guy that I met at the party. And he writes back and says, call me back like within 3 or 4 minutes. It was like so fast I didn't even realize there was a correlation between the email and the phone call. And he's like, it's me, Rich, man. Do you remember that? Do you remember that conversation we had at Super Happy Dev House like 9 months ago? Yeah, I kind of remember that. Yeah, what's up? He goes, I built it. And so he had built something that he called User Suggest. Shitty name. Great idea. Shitty name. And so we got together and started exchanging ideas and names. And that was like October. And by December, my phone stopped ringing. I wasn't getting any emails. And I kind of was like really pissed off. Like, where'd this guy go? And then in late January, he comes back. Oh, man, I'm so sorry. We went with someone else. He didn't work out. So we're going back to you, which always makes you feel so endeared, right? Like, thank you. I appreciate it. Fuck you, too. Yes. Okay. Actually, it wasn't bad. It was great. So by this time, they had searched high and low for a different name. And it turns out that this guy, Rich White, owned this domain in North Carolina, and it was User Voice. And so one of our advisors was saying, I found this domain. I think it's much better than User Suggest. You should call this guy in North Carolina. And Richard White, my co-founder, just kind of got this weird look on his face. It's like, wait, what was the domain registry? And the guy's like, I don't know. I think it was Gandhi or whatever it was, Gandhi.net or whatever. He goes, I think I registered that in college. And he goes back through his emails. Sure enough, Richard White was Rich White. He just forgot that he had registered this domain years before. And so was birthed User Voice, right? And so, yeah, we went with User Voice. Note to self, always keep track of all your domains. When you have that split idea, your split instant of an idea, you never know. So we started User Voice, and we launched in February of 2008. Right, when was the whole collapse? That was October 2008? Yeah, the meltdown. Huh? September 2008, yes. Okay, so this was early 2008. And I should probably remember all this stuff, but it kind of, so much happens. We start the company, and get your pens and paper out, because this is actually where you start learning shit, okay? So here's what we did. There was a company called Salesforce, and Salesforce came out with this thing called Ideas. And it was something that very close to what we were doing. They took the whole dig approach that we were using to voting up ideas. They kind of like were doing the same thing. We had based it off of this, off of dig as well. And so, the fact that you could vote ideas up and get feedback from customers in a way that was kind of very democratic and a way that, you saw what your users really wanted. And the thing that we did was way different than what Salesforce was doing is we gave you a finite amount of votes. You only had 10 votes. You could vote for whatever you wanted. You could spend up to 3 votes if you're really passionate about it, but you only got those 10 votes. And later on, we gave into pressure and allowed all the admins to make it as many votes as you wanted. But for us, we only gave you 10 votes. And so this company could come out, Salesforce, with this product, and they launched with Dell. It was a Dell Idea Storm. Big news, big promotion. And we saw that and we're like, fuck, that's what we're doing. I thought what we were doing is a little better, but we were like, oh, how are we going to compete with Goliath, right? These guys are way more, well prepared, right, than we were. And Mark Benioff's an amazing marketer. So how are we going to go up against this? And so we thought we kind of like pulled ourselves back and we said, well, if we're going to do it, we need to just do it now. And so we decided rather than build out the product that we wanted to do, we were going to release it as is. And so we launched a beta. And then South by Southwest was just a couple weeks later. So we went to South by Southwest. I designed some business cards. On one side, it was just our logo and our email address for each of us. And on the back side, it was a gray empty box. And at the top, it said, congratulations, welcome to your new beta. And we would walk around with a Sharpie. And then Lance, one of our developers, created a little web app, and we just put it on our iPhones, and we could spawn custom codes for each individual that we came up against. So by the time South by Southwest was over, I had given away all of my cards and half of my co-founders, right? We were just like spinning these things out. And the very next week, we had 3,000 signups. So now we had a little bit of momentum, right? We're getting feedback. Hey, I want private domains. Hey, I want to be able to like change the number of votes. Hey, I want image. All this feedback, and we're like, oh crap! Now we can build the product we want, right? Because now we know what our customers really need and what they're willing to pay for. And then we were onto something, right? And so then, I don't know. It was like 3 weeks later. Or 2 weeks later, whatever it was, beginning of April sometime, Jeremiah Owing, who was working for Forrester, who was an analyst, had done a briefing with Salesforce about their brand new My Starbucks idea. And now here it goes again, right? Big campaign, big marketing push for Starbucks, pushing the Salesforce idea product. And Jeremiah Owing wrote in his document, there really should be a very inexpensive version of this that you could white label and blah, 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 blah. Just basically like open the door wide open for us. So I wrote him an email. I said, oh, I noticed, Mr. Owing, you wrote this article and you said it should do this, we do that. You said it should do this, we do that. We did it, just went through the whole thing, right? As a matter of fact, here's a beta code, sign up today. And he did. And he put it on his blog post, got all this feedback right away, and just wrote this glowing report. Shit. Suddenly we had Intuit, Microsoft, all these massive companies that were like wanting our product. We weren't there yet. We knew where we were going, but we weren't there yet. So we couldn't like cash checks that we couldn't like write yet. So it just turned into this nightmare of build, 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 build. So here's the things to learn. 1, when you do go big, be ready, right? Because you want to cash in on the opportunity. Number 2 is, I would say, briefing your analysts. Everybody seems to forget this, but analysts are a really, really good way of getting the word out very quickly because they tend to deal with the big companies, especially if you're doing enterprise software. They're going to be talking to the companies that are looking for these solutions. So if they say, well, you could go with Microsoft, but here's XYZ, and they're the low-cost version of this. And guess what? Everybody wants to save money in today's economy, so they'll probably come to you too, right? They'll check you guys out. So that was the second thing, is really, be ready, 1. Number 2 is just brief analysts. And then number 3 is just start creating stories. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I come up with these conversations where I'm talking. Anybody marketing here? Who's a marketer? Okay, you're a storyteller. That's your job, right? And I can't tell you how many times I come across some amazingly talented young guys, and they're building product, and they're like, we're product people. We're going to build an awesome product. And that's great. It's great that you're product people. But if you can't tell a story and connect with people on a human level, you're going to miss the boat. There's so many awesome products there that don't do jack squat because nobody knows about them, nobody cares, nobody's emotionally connected. Think about the brands that really touch you, the brands that you connect with. Something, somewhere, had a message that resonated with you. Can anybody tell me a brand that's not Apple that connected with you? Can somebody give me one testimony? Anyone?
Nike.
Nike. And what was the connection?
During the 2008 Euro Cup, we had this wonderful advert done by Guy Ritchie, and it's just like it showed you basically the rise from the bottom of the soccer player to the very top of his performance, and you see it, you just see the hard work of the perseverance put together, and I was like, wow, I should start with soccer, you know? So it really connected with me.
Yeah. Who was the other person? There were a couple others. What was the brand that you connected with you? Goldman Sachs. And what was the story? Before or after September 2008? Mm-hmm. It's the exclusivity and the prestige. Yeah. See, but there's nothing wrong with that. See, because everyone has a story. Who was the one over here? What was it? And NCAA new football game? Okay.
And I go to Ohio State, and one of the ads is this dad who goes to Ohio State and his son drafts somebody else. Because you can pick other Heisman players to be on your team. And that's like, oh, that's cool. And he just throws the TV out because Ohio State's a big football school. You probably know.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, it's your thing, not mine. So, I mean, the thing is that we all have our stories, and it's always something, right? For me, if I were just to pick something, I probably should have thought of something before I put myself on the spot. I guess most recently, the one that really emotionally connected with me, has anybody seen the Olympic Moms commercial for Procter & Gamble? I fucking wept during it, at work, in my cubicle, just, oh my God, the whole time, because I just had a baby, it's my third baby, Well, I didn't have it, that would hurt, but, my wife had one. So going back to the lessons is, one, be ready for something, even if you can't charge for it, just have some, be ready for the time comes. Two, brief analysts, talk to analysts. PR's next, but get in front of analysts first, because if you can get on the good side of analysts, and what I mean by that is don't pitch the analyst. Make them a part of the process. Say, hey, we're working on this. What do you guys see out there? And what are the things we need to be ready for? How can we navigate this and be competitive against these other companies? Because at the end of the day, the analyst wants to be part of your story. And if you can make them feel like they're telling part of that story for you, all the more better, because they're going to talk about you and they're going to promote you. Why? Because now they have an emotional vested interest in your story. So that's number two. Number three was be a storyteller. Tell the great stories, right? And from there, we started growing. And the fourth learning that we learned was that as we grew, we made the mistake of trying to build everything we could to be able to sell. Meaning the product, not the company. But we tried to build everything that we were going to be able to do to have the bottom level, the mid level, the top tier level, all of that stuff. And I think that's the wrong way to go. And with my new company, I'm not going to make that mistake. And let me make it very clear to you how this would work. So you build a widget, right? And then you get feedback from customers, and the customers say, I want the widget to be able to be password protected. What you should say is okay, we'll build that, but would you pay $3 a month for that? And if they say yes, you've got your first sale. You build that. You get your $3 a month, and you sell it till the cows come home, right? And then you find out what the next thing they're willing to pay for. Well, I want password protection. I want a widget that does password protection and... Fuck, help me. What? Something else. Something else cool. What else do I want? I don't know, a widget that I can change the colors. I don't know, we're just really stretching right now. But anyway, so maybe you have this one that you can privatize and you can, change the colors. Would you pay $5 for that? Yes, I'll pay $5. Deal. Go build that, then start selling it. And then incrementally build your features. That's what I would have done. That was the lesson I learned with user voice. Instead, we spent a whole year building what we thought was going to be the enterprise level, and we turned around and said, oh, here's the enterprise, but if you want this feature, we'll sell it for that. If you want this feature, we'll sell it for that. And it was backwards. We should have totally started selling as fast as we could. So what ended up happening is, even though we got to the point where October 2008 hit, we were in the middle of fundraising, and just, the rug gets pulled out from under us. Nobody's raising, and we're trying to figure out how are we going to get this out of the door? How are we going to sell this? And it really was the precipice that pushed us over to say, you need to build that product. So we spent all of November and December building out that final product, and we launched in January on the enterprise version that we spoke about. And guess what? We were cash flow positive by the middle of March. And you think of that, we could have done that last summer. You're like, crap! We could have been selling all the way back there, because the ones that we were selling the most were the $19 a month, the $49 a month, the ones that people were willing to pay for. It was a lot harder to make the $20,000 annual license sale, because that would take 4 to 6 months, right, to close that deal. But I could sell $19, $49, and $99 all day long. Crap. Okay, so that's your lessons, okay? All of you guys? All right. So then I left there, and I ended up at Salesforce. And for the last 3 years, I've been heading up social media. And it's been awesome. I love Salesforce. I love the product. Well, I don't love the product. The product's good. But the people are awesome, right? I worked with the smartest people I've ever worked with in my whole life. And to be able to go through that and watch Mark Benioff change, where it was this classic enterprise, and then after being there for a year to just do this about face, seriously turning on a dime where the entire ship turned around and said, we're going to be social enterprise. That's a feat. I don't know many CEOs can pull that off. And the whole company just goes, yes, sir, let's go. And everybody dropped what they were doing. I was actually working on another project. I'd hired 3 Scrum teams. They all just disappeared. And I had to go find other work. Let's go do this. Let's go this, which is how I ended up heading up social media. So you get into these feats of change and being prepared and preparation for... That sounds stupid. I'm not even going to finish that sentence. I was going to say feeling prepared to preparation for change. No, that didn't. Yeah, see, it didn't work. So I think it's a mindset, right? Being okay with not knowing where the hell you're going to be tomorrow. And that's the essence of entrepreneurship, right? You don't know how it's going to end. We're all here for the excitement. If we didn't want the excitement, we would be just doing other jobs and just doing what we're told, but we're not good at that. We're horrible employees, right? We want to take control. We want to lead this ship, and we don't know where the ship's going to go, but we want to do it, right? And I think that's the thing that it drove me to the point that I had to leave Salesforce. They gave me so much leeway to lead that charge. But once we got there, it was I'm not having fun anymore, right? We're there. Everyone's looking at us. They're saying, oh, yeah, you're those guys. And I'm like, I got to go do something else. Oh, I just had a baby. Great. I just bought a house. Awesome. Let's quit my job. Yeah. Can you remember what that conversation at the dinner table went over like? But I have the most amazing supportive wife, and she's like, I was going to say grab it by the balls and go, but that has all kinds of different connotations. But no, she really wants to let's do this, right? And she's been amazing watching, that transformation of being scared and losing the security and the consistency of a paycheck and saying, let's just do it. And I've got a 6-month-old, a 10-year-old, and a 12-year-old. They go to private school. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. Insurance ends at the end of this month. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. We're raising around right now. We're fighting tooth and toenail and doing the whole sand hill shuffle and doing all the things you got to do. Everyone's like, this is awesome. Just come back next week. Okay, great. But what's going to happen next week? A big hug and a bye? I don't know. And that's kind of the excitement, and that's where we're at. So that's kind of my story. I know I rambled, but this isn't something I rehearsed, obviously. But I would love to kind of open it up to you guys for like questions. If you want to just kind of like riff, and let's like, if you've got issues too, like not issues, but I mean, if you've got like things that you're struggling with and you want to just like get some help, there's a lot of smart people in this room. And if you've got the like kahunas to like step up and talk about it, let's all kind of like wrestle with it and help you solve it. Yeah? All right, let's do that. Anybody got questions? Who wants to be on the spot first? Yes, sir. For me? Oh, shoot, where's my water?
Regarding the financing side of things, I mean, did you bootstrap originally?
Yeah, we bootstrapped. I think we raised, when we first started User Voice, we had $35,000 that a guy had given us to get started, and that was all we had. And one co-founder was in Walla Walla, Washington, which is fun to say. The other guy was here, and then I was in Wisconsin. And so we were working remotely the whole time, which is probably why we kept, our financial needs really low. But then we raised a friends and family round in June or July, once we had like all this kind of social proof that, hey, we're going to be able to do something. So then we raised about $100,000 from friends and family. And then we just went on until March. This is the kicker of the whole thing. So by the time we got to March the following year and we were cash flow positive, we were already closing around. So the day that we broke even that month, the next week we raised about $800,000, and we really regretted it. Not that we're definitely thankful that we were able to close around and all that was good, and it did open up lots of doors. But we were on our way. Now suddenly we could actually have had the freedom where we weren't under the pressure of these investors, and so there's a little regret in there. Is that even public? I don't know if it's public. More than you would today. A lot more.
Yeah, I mean, like, oh, thank you. Sorry. You would have probably been in a much better position or more confident if you had known that you were about to go to break even right before when you discussed that.
Yeah,
I guess,
the conversation would have been a lot more postured if we knew that we were break even. But we didn't know. When we started those conversations, we hadn't even turned on the machine, right? So that's the other thing. I mean, there's another lesson learned. There's number 5, right? Is like know where you stand and be able to posture that. You might not be there today, but you may be there in 2 months. And if you know that, you need to like act that today. Because by the time you raise that money, months are going to go by, and if you're still like the cowering little startup that thinks, oh, I'm not, I don't know if they'll give me the money, and you're like, all of a sudden you're putting all the power in their hands, and the negotiation starts 5 months ago instead of where you are today. So you really need to like start that negotiating, knowing full well, and yeah, inside you're scared as crazy shit, but you know that this is going to work, and you need to kind of keep that mindset. Otherwise, you crumble, then the deal crumbles, and it's over.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit about...
Hi, Carl.
Hi. Can you say a little bit about sort of, I guess, the dynamics of the founders and how they work together and how the sort of the startup dream team sort of works together, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there is no template. When we started User Voice, it was 3 of us, the guy in Walla, Washington, and Rich. They were the builders, so they actually built the real thing, and then that kind of came on and made it pretty. So I walked in that deal with like 15%. It's not awesome equity, but I knew that the product was pretty much there. I'm just walking in and taking it over, right? But as we went and we started to kind of move into like the sales, the PR, the marketing, the analyst briefings and all that, all of a sudden I became the face of the company. Even though I wasn't the CEO, it's just our CEO was a coder and he liked coding, so he didn't want to stand in front of an audience. So I took that part over. So then, we ended up giving a little bit more equity to me and it got a little bit more evened out. It wasn't quite 33, but it was a little bit more manageable. This time, I started Advocate by myself. I had another guy that I brought on, and I was prepared to give up, about 40%. That guy ended up walking from the deal like a week after I left Salesforce, and so I had to go find someone else. By that time, I had already lined up all my investors, had customers, had already wireframed the entire product. I just need somebody to build it. So then my negotiations were different, right? So I could bring somebody in and work out a better negotiation. Then after I actually made my negotiation and set up the deal, last week I changed my mind. I realized I was being an asshole, and so I gave him more. So, it's what you do, right? You need to make sure if somebody's putting in as much as you or more, make sure that they feel just as much like they're going to get something out of this as you do, right?
Can you add a little bit about the personality and how it will work together?
Yeah, just do whatever I tell you to do, and everything will be fine, right? No. My mom taught me something. She told my father, be nice to me and give me money and everything will be fine, right? And I think that's honestly, that's the crux of all of it, right? Can you work with them? And can you pay them something where all their needs are met, right? Not all their needs. They don't need the Jaguar, but they have everything that they need right now. And that's really the core, right? And then at some point find ways to surprise and delight. I hate that term, surprise and delight, but it's what you do. You surprise and delight your friends, right? And if they're your co-founder, find ways of making sure that you recognize that they are kicking ass, right? And that can take on all kinds of things. If it's somebody that likes to go on a fishing vacation or something, or, hey, our team activity this week or this month or whatever, let's go fishing, or do things that actually resonate with that person. I think we often make the mistakes of we try to help people with what we think that they want, and at the end of the day, we don't know what they want. And so if you're not talking and finding out what they want, you actually have a bad basis for a partnership to begin with. It's just like marriage, right? I mean, if you don't know what things resonate, how many people here are married? God, I'm the wrong crowd here. Okay, so there's a book that someday you may have to read. And it's called The 5 Love Languages, but it actually solves a fuckload of problems, right? So the 5 love languages, and I can't remember all of them because I'm riffing right now, but one of them is physical touch, right? That's one of the love languages. One's gifts. Another one is time. And this is where my memory starts failing. Time. Anyway, there's these gifts, right? And the thing is that the gift that you speak isn't necessarily the gift you receive. And so some people feel loved if you just tell them, I love you. I love you. Right? Yeah. So I was talking to her, but okay, you can take it. Yeah. And for some people, that's enough, right? They feel loved. For other people, you can tell them all day long you love them, but if you're not spending time with them, they don't feel love. And for other people, it's a gift, right? If you surprise them with a gift, they feel loved, or giving a gift, right? But sometimes the love that you speak isn't necessarily the love you receive. You could be a gift giver, and that's how you express love, but if somebody buys you a gift, you're kind of, you feel uncomfortable because it's not your language, right? And I don't know why we're talking love languages, other than the fact that I think that actually applies to your co-founders as well, right? Because you have to find out what are the things, like coders. If I bought a coder like tickets to go see the opera, I am not speaking their language, right? But if I gave him, hey, I just got some tickets to Skrillex, I'm not going to go, you want to go? Maybe they would want to go to Skrillex, right? Because that's like their thing or something. Or maybe they want to go to a Ruby convention in Austin or something, and that's their thing, right? It's finding ways to speak to people in a way that they receive it. And this is a complex human thing. This is not like you can't manipulate this stuff, because if it's not authentic, it doesn't get received as authentic and it fails. So this is, to answer the question, is you really have to kind of get to know your co-founder. My co-founder right now with Advocate, I've known for 5 years. I met him at a bar camp. We've kept in touch. He's always known what I was up to. I've always known what he's up to, right? And so when we decided we were going to do this, it was very much like hand in a glove, right? Because I had got this other guy. I thought it was going to work out. He bailed on me at the last minute. Somebody said, hey, when's the last time you talked to Abraham? I called Abraham. He goes, what you doing today? And so it started. So I mean, for me, I like to work with people that I can go and have a drink with. We can talk truth, and I'm not, all my shit's your shit's my shit. That's what the relationship I want. I don't want to have the relationship where it's fakey, 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 oh, fakey, 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 oh, you're real, and you split, right? Because everybody was fake the whole time. Nobody likes that. So don't be that, right? Be the person that you are, find the people who are who they are, and start there. It's not deep, it's just life, right? It's a horrible, shitty tweet if somebody tweeted that. But it's true. It's just true. All right, next. Who's first? Him? Close to the mic. You're next.
We'll talk about the short leash. I've got a couple of questions for you since you're in this high-tech environment. And for newcomers into the high-tech industry, from both sides, one from, let's say, somebody that's got a lot of money that wants to invest in the high-tech, and then the other person that's got a great idea but doesn't have any experience, doesn't know anything about high-tech, where's a good place to start for both scenarios? Where do you go? Where do you learn about this? Where do you find good opportunities?
You ever hear the expression, if you walk along the creek bed long enough, eventually you fall in? Never heard that expression? Is that like a Wisconsin thing? Maybe it's a Wisconsin thing. One I know is Wisconsin. Never mind, I won't even go into it. But you ever hear the expression like a cow at a new gate? Okay, so a cow is not comfortable with new surroundings. So when you say something and somebody looks at you like you are looking at me right now, you're looking at me like a cow at a new gate, right? Because it's like, this is unfamiliar. What is this, right? Anyway, it's shitty metaphor. So let's deal with the question. So the question was, how do you know if you're not very knowledgeable about the industry and you want to invest, how do you get started? What was the converse of that?
The second one is, if you have an idea, a good idea, how do you see getting the funding and the people behind it?
Are you a good idea, and are you a coder, or you just have an idea and you want to get people that can help you build it?
Right. You're not a coder. You're not a...
Okay, let's deal with that one first. If you're not a coder and you have an idea, that's really hard. It's really hard. You'll either get screwed, because you'll go and pay somebody that you think is going to build something and they'll build half of it and walk away, or shiny object or something like that. That happens a lot. If you are skilled in just at least wireframing it, or you have a friend that can wireframe it, so you can actually build the whole concept, so that way you yourself can actually product manage it. You can say, when's that part built? When's this part built? Where's that part built? So you can have that accountability. That's really the most logical way to be able to iterate on an idea. But just to have an idea and not have a friend or somebody that you truly trust to help you build it is a risk. It's a big risk. Yeah.
Well, the question is more like geographically and, coming you in the industry into the valley.
Yeah.
Like, where are some places where you can meet people, where you can get...
Well, places like this. Everybody go meet this guy afterward, okay? No, this is actually, that's what it is. It's like you go to Eventbrite or, Plancast, unfortunately, is kind of not as dependable as it used to be, but there's all these things that are happening every night of the week. And if you just kind of hang around, that's why I said the expression, you hang around if you walk along the creek bed long enough, eventually you fall in, meaning that eventually you're going to meet the right person that you guys click, there's a symbiotic relationship and you can work together, right? But, just to kind of go on your own and hire some group or something gets really, really risky, unless you honestly know that you're a good product marketer, or not marketer, I'm sorry, a product manager, and that you can actually have a strong enough vision that you can tell that story from end to end. Otherwise, I wouldn't take the risk. That's my personal feeling on it. As far as the other idea, you've got money and you want to find good ideas, I would hang around, get to know people who are already investors, and see if you can find somebody that be kind of like your protege and mentor you and kind of get you to a place where you can speak fluidly about terms and what goes into it, and then also have a good idea of what actually works in the industry, right? Talk to other investors. Yeah, get to know those guys first and lean on their expertise. Yes, sir. one more thing. Find the investors who have actually already done it. Don't go to dumb money. Because if they just have money and they're investors, yeah, maybe they've been doing it a long time. That doesn't mean they actually know why they're doing it. They just find guys who have actually built product. Okay.
What makes a good community manager?
Oh, geez.
And how do I find one?
A good community manager has everything to do with empathy. If the person is not empathetic, if you can't ask questions and get them to think outside of themselves immediately, they're going to be a horrible, horrible community manager to begin with. It's empathy. It's, can I put myself in this guy's shoes, feel what he's feeling, know his frustration, and be able to speak to it? That's the core element of a community manager. If they come and they tell you, hey, I've got this big strategy, and they sell you on this big vision and whatever, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Until they can kind of speak to you and you feel like they know where you're coming from, that's empathy. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody and you immediately walked away and went, that guy gets me. Oh my gosh, that was, bosom buddy or whatever, That's a horrible term too, bosom buddy, but it is what it is, right? So that's what I mean by somebody who's empathetic. People who are really awesome at this, if you look at people like Drew Olenoff, he's a writer now, but he used to be a community manager. He kind of gets this. People like Maria Ogniva from Yammer, she gets this. Read stuff that she's written. There are resources on the web that you can get from Chris Brogan, Jay Baer, who else? Jeff, what's his last name? Oh, I'm going to kick myself later. But anyway, if you hit me up later, I'll get you some of those names. But people who've already written about this and actually have questionnaires that will actually identify some of these things for you. So if you ask a question, they'll actually coach you on what are the answers that you should be listening for. Yeah. And I told you you'd get one, so yeah.
It seems like most of your experience in enterprise software is that like coincidence or do you think consumer software has not made up for that?
I could answer that in two ways. One, a real smart-assy way. The other one is probably more true. The smart-assy way is, honestly, I never tried to do either. I just started to build stuff that I thought I liked and was interesting to me, and found other people that were willing to give me money for it. And I like money. So, how many of you guys actually work for big companies? And just the people who are doing startups right now, not the interns, but people who are doing startups right now have already worked for a big company. So these are the guys who have gotten to the place at a big company where they were so frustrated they had to go and solve issues. And one of my biggest frustrations about the Valley right now, where we are today, is we have so many young guys who are freaking brilliant, and gals, who are brilliant, and they think that they should just go do a startup. And the problem is they don't even know the questions that they should be solving. And my recommendation, honestly, if I had lots of money and I wanted to do something, I would handpick some of these bright stars and send them to Google and say, look, I'll pay for your rent, just go work for Google for 6 months, or go work for Microsoft, or SAP or EMC, some of these companies that you're like, God, would I ever want to work? Yes. If you did work there, you would identify right away where the problems are, and you would have so many ideas, you could be writing them down all day long, and after that year's up, go build that and beat the shit out of them. That is a game plan. But the problem is, all these young guys are being trained, told, and empowered to give in stupid money and just go and do stuff and try and figure it out. Why do you think we have this word pivot? It's because kids don't know what the shit they're doing. They're just like, oh. That's a pivot. Means you don't know what the fuck, where's north? I don't know. Your internal compass is going to be based on life experience, period. And until you've had the problems where you've gotten the shit kicked out of you and you got so frustrated you want to pull your hair out, look, see how frustrated I've been? I mean, until you get to that point, you're not going to know how to solve bigger issues. And honestly, the kids that come out of college that make those big choices to go and work for that choose not to do the Y Combinator, nothing against those things, but that choose not to do those first and go and get in the trenches and do shitty work for a while, those are the guys that are come out, like the guy that was supposed to be here tonight, Aaron, right? How old is he, 27? Right. He had a problem. He worked for a big company. He had a big problem. He's like, I can fix this. What do? He goes fix it, and now he's kicking ass, right? And that's where I think is the crux of today's opportunity, is not in building the next, it's Instagram, but for Kentucky Fried Chicken with Evernote. I don't, come on, don't iterate on somebody else's idea. Go figure out new problems, new questions, and answer them yourself. No. Just kidding. Go ahead.
My company, the average age is 25.
Okay.
We have 60 people right now.
Okay. Can I have a couple of them? Okay. No. Okay. Well.
So we have the money, we have the product, and it's already tested overseas on over 100 million, like to go on scale.
Yeah.
But my question is, how do we get it off the ground in the US?
Marketing. Tell a story. What's the problem you're solving?
Okay, so we work with large video on demand and live streaming companies, so think of YouTube, Hulu, and Netflix, who have to pay a crap ton of money to move the data around. Even so, we as viewers, we get the horrible buffering thing.
Right.
So what we do is this, we cut the bandwidth cost by 50% and drop the buffering instances by 50% by allowing BitTorrent kind of technology in the actual flash player itself, where people are watching a video without any downloads or plugins. So 100 million videos viewed a day in China. That's why I'm here, because we've captured the Chinese market.
Right.
So how do we get it off the ground?
You fell asleep through it. It's actually very interesting technology. If you have money, that's a good idea. And have you raised any money?
No, we have money and revenue positive. So.
Okay, I hate you, but other than that, so you're trying to say, how do I scale that in the United States? So who are your competitors here? It's BitTorrent.
So BitTorrent is not a competitor because they require.
I'm sorry, not BitTorrent. BitGravity, right? Akamai.
We work directly on the actual flash player itself. It's super easy integration. So if instead of talking about competition, we could talk about clients. Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, and so on. Vimeo would be potential clients.
I've never heard of any of those companies. Yeah, but so you need to find who has, right? Who does know those guys, right? So you're going to want to find someone who's either worked for those companies or markets to those companies or already has existing relationships, who is working for a big agency or something, and hire that guy, right? Someone who already has a pre-existing relationships.
You happen to know.
There's this thing called LinkedIn. But maybe this guy knows somebody, right? But that's how you got to play that game, right? Because you're going to walk in, they're going to say, "Who's this punk from Beijing?" Right? But if somebody that they know steps in and says, "Okay, I have a pre-existing relationship here," people trust who they know, right? So it would behoove you to find that person. If you can't find that person, you're going to have to be a little bit more creative. In which case, you're going to have to bring somebody who is not dressed in a hoodie and whatever, but somebody who's kind of this guy, right? Who kind of walks in. Well, maybe not him. He's got a sunburn. But I'm just kidding. If you find somebody who's like got a reputation and is trustworthy, that they can go Google and say this guy's legit, find somebody like that to represent you, right, and introduce you to these companies. I'm betting some of these guys in here probably already have some names in their head that they can kind of hook you up with, but really it's relationships. Jiquan? No, what's the Chinese word for relationships? Quanxi, yes.
Okay, so please come find me. I have 3 options. Orange with these.
He's easy to pick out. It's Quanxi? Quanxi. That's it's a Chinese expression for your value is your relationships, right? Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I love Beijing, so it was cool. Minus the pollution, yes. Shanghai's pretty nice too. Also polluted, but nice. All right. Yes, sir. We'll get to you.
I relate to your bad employee example. I used to work with Countrywide and had a bunch of ideas. Told myself PHP, put it together. Been in San Francisco 2 weeks.
Okay.
I'm at the point now where I need somebody else. So in 2 weeks, is this
The fact that you learned that in 2 weeks means that you're a smart guy. Most people spend a lifetime not knowing they need somebody else to help.
Is there a thing where in trying to find a co-founder, I should be a little bit more patient and say, you know what, maybe go through the process, or should I,
Everybody you meet, hey, I'm looking for a co-founder. Hey, I'm looking for a co-founder. Hey, I'm looking for a co-founder. You speak it. Speak it. Let people know. Every time you talk to somebody, I'm looking for a co-founder. This is what I'm looking for. Be very specific with what kind of people. I'm looking for someone with PHP, somebody who may have a marketing background, or somebody who's already done a startup, or somebody who's wanting to leave a startup. Figure out what that thing is and speak it everywhere you go. Because people aren't going to give it to you unless they know that you need it. Right? And I think that's one of us as humans, that we have that problem. We often don't want to tell people what we need. You know what the biggest problem is with most startups that are trying to start a company and they have to start selling their product? Do you know what I'm going to give you the 5 rules, right? Everybody ready? So when you're at the point where you have your product and you're ready to sell, first thing, ask for the money. First thing, as soon as you start talking, hey, this is going to cost $49, let's talk about this. Start with that. I don't really remember what the other 4 things are, but if you start with the first one, I swear to God, that is right there, that's the crux. When you get into a conversation with somebody about your product and you want them to be a product, or not a product, but you want them to be a customer, start with the price. Hey, we're asking $20,000 for an annual license right now. Here's how this is going to change your life. And then you go into your pitch. Start with the money. Because you're not there to be their friend. You've got lots of friends. You probably don't need another one. What you want is that check. So, for you, how are you going to get a co-founder? Go to events. Go to hackathons, anything that you can go, startup weekends. There's stuff here. You are in the crux of everything that happens here. There's no excuse why you couldn't find somebody other than the fact that they already work for another big company that can pay more than you can. But there's people that will take the gamble if they believe in you. So sell yourself. Okay. This guy's next.
Yeah, I'm looking at your angel list.
My angel list.
I noticed that you have 10 plus companies you started.
10 plus companies, yes.
Companies are those?
Oh, God. We already talked about some of this. Do I have to go into all this? Okay, so 10 companies. So the first company I started was, it was a marketing company for, it was called McDougal Entertainment Group. Oh my God. We thought we were going to change the entertainment world by creating Disney-esque type of family-oriented content for films and music and whatever, and that we were going to create this new, it was a shitty idea. Anyway, we had an investor, we started up, we were in Chicago, and then the investor had some property in Florida, and Hurricane Andrew came through, wiped out some of his property, and he just kind of like pulled all the funding. Thank God he did, because I don't know what the hell we were thinking. But anyway, that was like the first company. Second company, I started a nonprofit organization, which was called Rockwater, which was what we thought would be the graduation of Boys and Girls Club, where you would step into, like at 15 years old, this would be something. We were the first internet cafe in central Wisconsin. We had live music every 3 times a week. We sold coffee. That was our monetization. And then we had festivals and all kinds of stuff like that. And then we taught HTML classes and how to build websites. And then we did digital marketing. And as going into 2000, we did video, right? It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Did it for 6 years, and the city bought our building and turned it into a parking lot. And that was over, right? So then the next thing I did is I started a consultancy, Superstarch, because I couldn't get Extra Starch. Somebody bought it like 2 weeks before me. So I got Superstarch. And Superstarch was a consultancy where I went and I built, that actually did pretty good. I built a lot of tools for a lot of different companies, designed mostly logos. If you go to my Carbon Made website, it's marcusnelson.carbonmade.com, you'll see a bunch of my portfolio. Did that for a while. Out of that, I started a citizen journalism site back before it was cool, and it was called, the first one was called Citizen Wausau, which was my hometown, which is where Marissa Mayer is from and some other people. myself included. And we did, I Am Citizen was going to be the company, and we started another sister company in Santa Cruz, and we wanted to do these like, anybody could, basically be your own news source. And it was a beautiful website. We won a bunch of awards, but never raised any money. And then what I did, I started a co-working space, lit myself on fire there, got evicted. It was awesome. Nearly lost my wife. Then we did another company. It never had a name, never went anywhere. Then we did TaskPick, then User Voice, then Salesforce, then I think that's everything. There might be something else in there, but yeah. But that's the thing. I mean, all these entrepreneurs are coming fresh out of college where their parents, paid for all their college and they don't have any bills and stuff. I envy that person, right? So much. Once you've been evicted and lost your company, or somebody took over your servers because a co-founder decided they wanted the company, and then you can't log in and you don't know how to you don't have the money to sue them, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Yeah. Yes, sir. For somebody fresh out of college, you're saying, or something? Yeah. Affect your what? Or your overhead? Would actually help your overhead if you went and worked for a big company and could squirrel away cash. What? You might have misunderstood me. What I said was that if somebody's going to go fresh out of college or fresh out of out here, rather than start a company, don't start a company, go work for a big company first. Figure out what are big problems that need to be solved. Squirrel away cash, save money, and then a year later, quit and go build that. Go fix it. Find the problems.
So when you're at that stage where you work already with large companies and you have the money and you want to go ahead and build a company, would you prefer to employ people from the large firms or people with technical know-how but more experience?
Which would I prefer? Are you asking me or just generally? From experience, having worked for big companies, it's a lot easier to recruit from those companies. You're not supposed to, but inevitably what happens, you sign these little pieces of paper, say I won't recruit, whatever. And yes, you won't recruit, but what inevitably happens is people watch your Facebook, they watch you're starting this thing, and they come to you. And they're like, I hate what I'm doing, I see what you're doing, I want to do it. And there's nothing that can stop them. It's a free to work state. So if somebody comes to you and says, hey, do you need anybody to help out with marketing? Of course. If you already know them, you've already worked with them, and you have a rapport, go for it. But they better understand that you're not going to be able to pay them the same amount, yeah? But you can make that up with equity and give away as much equity as you need to. Yes?
You spoke about this earlier just a little bit, but for someone, for example, like cannot code or may not have that design background, would you recommend, because I've heard both sides of it, I've heard people say, go learn how to code, right? And I've heard people say, go keep getting better at what you're doing to make a better team.
Yeah.
So how do you stand on that? Do you lean either way, or do you kind of, I can't code. So
yeah, I'm sorry. Neither can I. I used to. It's been a long time. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. The thing is this. My opinion doesn't mean jack shit. You need to listen to your gut and do what your gut says. I've found in my 41 years that every time I needed somebody else to do something, thinking that was going to solve it, it always screwed it all up. But if I just said, okay, screw it, I'm going to do it myself, everything pretty much turned out pretty good. And I think we get to this point where we feel like we have to ask people all the time, should I do this, should I do that? And really what we're actually asking is, give me a reason to talk myself out of the thing that I know I should do. It's just what I figured out. I don't know if it's right or wrong. Ask me in 10 years, maybe I'm totally wrong. But I think that's how it is, right? You have this internal compass, and if you obey it, things actually tend to work out. So to your question, am I a coder, am I not? What do you think you should do? I'm asking you.
Keep getting better at what I'm already good at.
Well,
Become a better asset.
go fucking do that. Yeah. Yeah, whatever. My brother! So, seriously though, I'm serious. It's, I've talked to so many people that are asking questions all the time. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? It doesn't matter what I think. What do you think? So, yes, sir.
You mentioned you were fundraising down on Sand Hill Road.
Yeah, don't tweet that. I don't think you're not supposed to tweet that. Yeah, but yes.
But just tell us how that experience has changed, like now versus some of your previous experiences with other companies.
Did somebody tell you this? Because this is a great question. So the experience being kind of nobody from Wisconsin coming in and trying to raise money to having worked for Salesforce and User Voice, which is now kind of a known name or commodity, and then trying to raise money and then having a little press kick at the end helped tremendously. So 2 weeks ago, I made two mistakes, two critical errors, and I knew I made them, but I didn't give a rat's. One is that I announced that I was leaving Salesforce, and having been, the head of social media for Salesforce would have been a huge press release, and I probably could have milked the hell out of that, being that Salesforce is the social enterprise right now. I could have milked that. I didn't. The second one is that when I announced that I was doing Advocate, again, I could have milked it again, kind of leapfrogging off that. Those were tactical errors, I think, in some people's books. But in what I was trying to accomplish was I was trying to build product first. I knew that if I didn't have product, no story I could tell would be able to march me into Sand Hill and get money. I had to build products. So we just kept low, kept going. And then when the time was right, I gave an exclusive to TechCrunch and said, look, nobody's written about this, I haven't promoted this, but if you want to write it, I'll meet with you guys. And so they did. The very next week, I queued up 15 meetings, within 3 days. Boom, boom, boom. And why? Well, one, because I work for Salesforce, and that's kind of a hot commodity. Two, I'm not a new founder. I've done this a couple times, so you've got a team. Three, I have a co-founder who built the Twitter OAuth, the PHP library for Twitter OAuth, which powers most of the social world. So that's, you've got a strong team, strong dev team. So to be able to march into these companies, and then for the last 3 months, kind of massaging all these other different VCs. I'd go to Big Omaha. Has anybody been to Big Omaha? Oh my God, you should go. It's awesome. If you can get a ticket, they only allow 650 people going. But it's a high concentration of entrepreneurs from the Midwest, entrepreneurs from the East, West Coast, and venture capital. And they all get together. It's kind of exclusive. It's kind of like where I imagine South by Southwest would have been in the early days. But I was there, and I'm sitting there, and here's Mark Echo, the guy who started Echo Clothing, and I'm walking. Here's Shervin Pilsner from Menlo, and here's the dude from Lear Ventures, and it's all this concentrated awesomeness, right? And I just started conversations. So by the time I actually got to Sand Hill Road last week, I had already kind of warmed up to all these guys, right? Hey, I'm talking to this guy. Oh, don't you know that guy? And I'm playing stupid. I totally know they know that guy. But I just, name dropped, right? Oh, did you get that name down there? You dropped that. Yes, of course I was doing that all day long. And it works. And that's what happens, these guys, it's a trust thing. I don't know you, but I know of you, and I know other people who know you, so you can't be that bad, right? And that's the start, right? That opens a conversation. And so now, since then, I've gotten 4 callbacks, 2 offers, and something else. It's starting to happen. And AngelList, if any of you guys are using AngelList, it's been pretty much shit for me.
Have you, was there a certain VCs that you really wanted to target that you really wanted, that you're trying to?
I can't say that there was one, because everybody says that, right? Find the VCs you really want to target. I never wasted my time to do that. I'm very, as you kind of feel, I'm very what feels right when I'm talking to someone. Does this sound like a guy that I want to work with? And then who else has worked about that? And then I work my way backwards. So the one meeting where that didn't work for me, where I think the meeting actually went good, but inside I knew I was off my game, was Andreessen Horowitz. And that's because in my head I think I played them up so much that when I was there it was just kind of like Kid in a candy store. Really? But on the outside I'm all, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? I kind of was like just, I want this, you know? And that kind of fucks it all up. But if you just walk in there and you just they're them, and you just do the simpatico type of banter, that always works for me. It's when I play myself up and I get too excited and I really want something, then it tends to just kind of fall away and crumble. So if Anderson comes in, great. But if they don't, I'm not surprised, because I don't think I did it my best job. Yeah. So, yeah.
You have recommended that when you just graduate from college, like, go into something like...
Congratulations. Congratulations. Yes. Okay.
I've always gravitated towards startups. I want to start doing startups someday. So my goal was to go work for a startup when I got out.
What's your major?
Psychology, and I thought that...
Psych it out, yeah. I'm watching you. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I ended up interning as an accelerator for a startup. And I found that the interns there, the employees there, they basically take on the role of co-founder, because you have to, I mean, everybody's coming in and to make this company run and to make this company grow.
Right.
And I'm curious, like, I mean, how that value when you go work for a startup? Well, you want to company, how does this
Well, here's one of the reasons why Salesforce was a really great company to work for. It still operates like a gigantic startup. I mean, things change momentarily. You split off into teams. I mean, it's very much a startup culture. Long hours, you work your ass off. It's hugely gratifying when it works. If it doesn't, not so much. But, you know, the thing is that if you get into a company like that has that culture, and there's lots of them around, it's not just Salesforce, there's other big companies that do this. My point was, if you get into those big companies, you start to figure out the culture that you really want. Or you figure out what you didn't want, but you know that if you had it your way, you would change things, right? So oftentimes you'll get into these companies and you'll figure out politics is a big play, and you'll try and figure out how to navigate politics. That's actually a really good lesson. And you're not going to get that in a small team. You're not going to get the politics lesson there. And the reason why it's a good game is that if you learn that, you can be a good salesperson, because you'll figure out who are the decision makers, who's actually leading this meeting. You'll start picking up on visual cues and audible cues that you probably wouldn't get if you never worked for a big company and you figure out the kind of class and ranking systems that happen in big companies that nobody talks about, but when you're in the meeting, you know whose meeting this is. And those are very small nuances that you'll never be exposed to in a small company. Does that make sense?
It does, but if you start your own company, do politics really matter? I mean, if you're never...
Oh, they will one day. One day they will. Seriously, they will. They will matter. But if you're just getting started, if you don't have a lot of school bills and you can take the risk and go do a startup, and that's what you know in your gut you're supposed to do, don't listen to me. I'm just telling you, like, if I had to do it all over and I got the chance, this is what I would do and this is what makes sense to me. It may not be for you, right? Yeah. You're over your 2-question limit, by the way. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, when you work for a large company, I've always worked for large companies, you know, like, they have enormous enormous resources to train you and keep you up to date on everything. Yeah. I mean, they will not spare the dime.
Oh yeah, I mean, I worked for Wassa Insurance, which got acquired by Liberty Mutual. I worked for Dobson Communications, which got acquired by AT&T. And basically, if I wanted to go to school, if I wanted to go learn something, they pay for it. Go do it. I mean, you could go and take classes. You could spend pretty much your whole time just going to night classes, and they'll pay for most of it. So there's, you know, to your point, yes, that's just one more thing. At a big company, you are afforded so many different luxuries that you can't in a small startup. And if you know you're not quite ready and you got to kind of brush up on some stuff, like what you learn in school is not what's out there right now. What you're learning today is what was relevant 5, 6, 8 years ago. And that's how most schools are. It does, whether it's Harvard, whether it's Princeton, it doesn't matter. Yes, they'll bring in outside speakers, and yes, they'll do some motivational stuff, they'll kind of whatever, but odds are you're not getting the most relevant information. So getting in the real world and learning how real business works is actually hugely, hugely beneficial. So, all right, anybody else? Good. Last time. You're at your two limit, yeah.
So we were talking about analyst reports and briefings, and we should get to those people. Yes. How do we get to those people?
Send them money. You know what? Honestly, some of the best conversations I've ever had with analysts, I shouldn't say their names. Yeah, I'm not going to say their names, but there are certain analysts that I had met at a conference or I met at a party or something, and just simply by saying, hey, are you closing up after this, or do you want to go down and get a little nightcap or something? And you'll be surprised at how open some people are when they're in this big room and there's lots of people and they just want to like go and have real conversation, and they'll be like, oh, thank God, let's go let's sit down and have like real talk, none of this superficial stuff. And it's amazing, like when you go to those situations, the other thing is read blogs, like read what somebody's writing who's in your space, comment on it, don't be a douchebag, don't be like, hey, that's awesome, but look at my stuff. Don't be that guy. But add value to the conversation or throw back questions that show the person who wrote it that you are paying attention and that you're a smart guy and that you really honestly want to learn from them. And they, in time, will get to know who you are and feel okay with you. And at some point, you can make that ask. But think of it as a bank account. All relationships are a bank account. I make deposits, I make deposits, I make deposits. Someday I may take a withdrawal, but deposit all the time, whether it's on a blog or at a party, say nice things. Somebody sends an article, retweet it, hey, great job, so-and-so. Those kind of things go a long way. And at some point, you'll ask something of them. But in the meantime, just nurse the relationship. And as authentically as you can. Don't milk it, don't abuse it. Try to actually really, truly get to know somebody. Yeah. That's it? Is that a wrap? All right.